Today we are making a traditional English dish called sticky toffee pudding. It's a classic British dessert that consists of very moist, warm sponge cake drowned in a rich toffee sauce. But first, let's learn a little bit about the history of this dish. Sticky toffee pudding's history is a little controversial. The two stories that are the most common about the history of sticky toffee pudding are first, that the pudding dates back to World War II. There's a story that a Canadian soldier invented the recipe and brought it from Canada during World War II. The second story claims that dates and toffee puddings date back way further than World War II because English dishes heavily rely on dried fruits because they're readily available. However, both stories include the Sharo Bay Hotel, which is located in the Lakes District. They popularized the dessert in the 1970s and 1980s, making it as iconic as it is today. Sticky toffee pudding is Kate Middleton's favorite dessert. This dish is connected to English culture and traditions in three ways. Pudding is the British word for dessert. Sticky toffee pudding belongs in the steamed sponge category of pudding, and dense sponge cakes are heavily filling. This is why puddings like jam, roly-poly, date pudding, and spotted dick pudding are so popular. Secondly, a Sunday roast is an English tradition. And Sunday roast consists of meats, veggies, and gravy. Sticky toffee pudding is a way to end a Sunday roast because it is rich, warm, and sweet after a savory meal. Lastly, the ingredients for sticky toffee pudding came from agricultural history of England. Dates and sugar aren't actually British-grown foods. However, because of colonial trade and exports, lots of sugar and dried fruits were imported in the 17th and 19th centuries. However, the butter and cream is English. It comes from dairy farming in the Lake District. Thus, those are common ingredients in English desserts. Now, let's get started with the fun part. The ingredients for the cake are butter, dark brown sugar, eggs, half and half, vanilla extract, flour, baking powder, and salt. The ingredients for the sauce part of the cake is dark brown sugar, butter, and boiling water. To start off, I fully greased a deep pan with butter. I started by melting 4 tablespoons of butter in a microwave-safe bowl, and once I let that cool, I then incorporated a half a cup of brown sugar. After that, I whisked in 1 egg, and once the egg was fully combined, I added half a cup of half and half. Once that was fully combined, it was time to add the dry ingredients. 1 cup of flour, 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder, and a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Then I mixed that until it was fully incorporated. This is a spice cake. I added a sprinkle of cinnamon and nutmeg. Now that the dough is done, it's time to work on the sauce. A full cup of brown sugar is sprinkled over the top of the cake. Then 3 tablespoons of cold salted butter are cut into small pieces and placed within the cake. Now here comes the interesting part that makes it very moist. You take 1 3/4 cup of boiling water and pour it on top of the butter and brown sugar until there is fully a liquid layer on top of the cake. The cake bakes in the oven at 375 for 35 minutes. Once the cake is finished, it should look entirely different because all of the boiled water and butter has soaked to the bottom of the cake, making it extremely moist. This is what my sticky toffee pudding looked like while it was cooling. This dish is traditionally served with vanilla ice cream, so I scooped it with ice cream for my family to try. I made a serving for my dad, my mom, and me. My father, my mother, and I all enjoyed the dish. Overall, this dish was fairly easy to make. It didn't take a long time, and the recipe was really easy to follow. However, the consistency of it was really interesting. It's definitely meant to be something that is very, very filling. Overall, I chose this dish because I appreciate British comfort food. I feel like some English food, like beans and toast, gets a bad rap, and then people generalize that English food is bad, when for me, sticky toffee pudding actually sounded really good. This dish has influenced my perception of British food because many foods go deeper than what tastes good, and it made me further investigate English trade routes and how they influence their food culture. I don't think that I would seek out this dish while I'm studying abroad. However, if it's on a menu at a Sunday roast, I would happily partake. Food teaches us more than a textbook because a textbook would just say that sticky toffee pudding is a British dessert. But cooking it forces you to engage with the ingredients and portion sizes and the specifics on how the food is eaten. Food carries a history that textbooks can talk about, but making the food and eating the food is experiencing that history. For the sources for this article, I used Sam Bilton's A History of the Christmas Pudding from the English Heritage, Mike Mackerhan's The Continuous Origins of England's Famous Pudding from BBC Travel from BBC. I used Chris Schuer's Ridiculously Easy Sticky Toffee Pudding recipe, and I used Encyclopedia Britannica's Sticky Toffee Pudding article.